Welcome to the Choose to Be podcast. Thank you, everyone, for joining our conversation today. This is the beginning of a four-part series on therapeutic separations. This has come a few different times with clients and in groups. And I was telling Alana, I don't think we've done like a whole series and really dove into a therapeutic separation and what it is and how it can be beneficial and what it looks like. So hopefully this really helps. One thing that came to my mind as I was thinking about those of you listening and typically the situation that you're in as our listeners, you are probably listening to a bunch of podcasts. You're probably in a bunch of groups. And so you're hearing different things. And we're always looking for something to help us, something to help fix the situation. What's that next thing? What's the book, the podcast episode, whatever that is, right? And so maybe you've been hearing about a separation and yet you're not quite sure if that's the right thing for you, what that even looks like. And you might even be told that it's not a good idea, but maybe there's this part of you, this intuitive feeling or instinct that maybe it would be a good idea. So hopefully we clear up a couple things for you today around this. Like I said, we're going to face this conversation out over the next 4 weeks. So hang in there with us.
Maybe we clarify really quick just what the heck a separation actually is and means. Because in my groups, I have multiple women who are actively doing separations, and every one of them looks different. And so you can have an in house separation where the two of you are sleeping in different rooms and there might be that emotional distance. You can have an out of house separation. You can have a separation that's not therapeutic, where we've just gone our separate ways and we're just trying to figure it out. You can have a therapeutic separation where you have a therapist who's helping guide the process and basically has eyes on each of you. And there's a little bit of a roadmap of what we are trying to gain through the separation. You can have a legal separation, which means it's very similar to divorce, where everything, and we'll go more into this in future episodes, but legally on paper, you are separated, your finances are separated, your taxes are separated. Legally, you are separated. And then we can have, I think that's it. I think those
Think
are
we've
the,
covered them all. Yeah.
yeah, the main categories of different types of separation. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a lot. And so if you're already confused, then I just want to validate how that can be really confusing. And it can be really confusing also, just even with that question, well, do I need one? So, the most typical therapeutic separations that I know I help clients navigate, you help clients navigate, a lot of those are based on helping our clients create the safety that they need in the relationship. And when there is a lot of arguing, when there's a lot of trauma triggers and trauma responses, when there's continued acting out behaviors, when boundaries aren't being respected, if you want to just reevaluate the relationship, when communication just seems to not be working and we're having just a lot, again, like a lot of these arguments, when you find that your body physically just won't calm down, when it's constantly in a state of fight, flight, or freeze, and you're finding it very difficult in your partner's presence to get regulated, typically those are the kind of healthy space and separation that I know I usually offer my clients to consider, especially when they've done everything they can under the sun to try and get regulated.
Well, there's so many big fears that come up with separation.
Yeah.
My biggest fear when I was going through it was, what if this is the beginning of the end? And every time, like, that was the thought that went through my head. If I do this, I'm just putting a nail in the coffin. And so there was this great fear of, if I need any more space or if I need a separation, that means I'm choosing divorce. And I'm not ready for divorce. So I guess I just have to power through and figure this out. And so I want to give you permission that you don't actually have to be choosing anything around the long term outcome of the marriage. with needing a separation. And the truth is, it may be really beneficial for you to have a separation, and it also may not be. And so there is no right answer here. I remember listening to Sam Tillman's podcast on separations, and he was asking the question of, do you really know why you want a separation? Because I can't tell you how many individuals come wanting a separation, A, because they've heard people in group talk about it, or they heard a podcast about it and they go, well, I guess that's just the next step. Tell me what to do on this roadmap. So I will do it. So separation's good, done. We're going to have a separation because that's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's not a good reason to do a separation. Please do a little more work to figure out a why. The other big reason I see, and Amy, I know you see this too, and I know you know what I'm going to say, but the other big reason is if I get a separation, then maybe he will be better, or maybe he will finally understand it, or maybe he'll start doing the work, or I really want to show him and make him see. And you hear all of that. It's about him. I want him to do this. I want him to see this. I want him to get it. I want him to act in this certain way. That is not a good reason for a separation. Now, could that have an impact? Absolutely, it could. But that is not the reason. We don't make our life choices based off of trying to get someone to do something else because now we're falling into a manipulation category.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm glad that you said that, and I really just want to hold space for those who might be listening and have either done that, and maybe you're in the middle of it and you're like, "Oh, shoot, it's okay. We can definitely repair some of that and do a little shiftaroo." But I think that's really a great it might be a really great time to take a step back and reassess the why around, "Why am I doing this?" If you are in the middle of it. So I'm glad that you brought that up because, yeah, I see that a lot and hear that a lot. And it's interesting because I was working with one client and we were talking about this and, well, what's the why? And I could hear in her response, I can see her brain going over to his bubble. Well, if I did this, then he'll do this. And so I said, "Can I make an observation? Here's what I'm hearing. Tell me what you think about that." And she's like, "Oh, well, okay." And then she started talking again later in the conversation, and her brain went back over to that space of, "Well, yeah, if we do this, then he'll do this, and he'll do this, and he'll do this." And so I just brought it up again. I said, "Here's what I'm noticing. Tell me what you hear there." And it took 3 times for me to just reflect back to her what her brain was offering for her to go, "Oh, yeah, I really am trying to get him to do something." And so I point that out because I really don't want this to come across as shaming or you're doing something wrong here. This most likely is how you've been thinking in the relationship for years already as a way to survive and attach and fix and, emotionally regulate or just regulate, survive. Is that you've learned how to behave and do and not do certain things to navigate the impact of his choices. So it can be really hard to see that those patterns come up when your intentions are not to do it for him. So I think what I kind of leading into with this is that if you are asking this question or you're feeling like this might be really helpful for you, please reach out to someone who is a professional in this area to help you navigate that. Because just that example alone, you're not going to be able to see everything that your brain's offering you around this, not because you're weak, not because you're doing something wrong. It's just these are really deeply ingrained patterns of behavior that we have. So, anyways, just wanted
Well,
to say that.
I love that you said that because I feel like when it comes to separations, there's so many layers of confusion. There's so many fears that come up. There's so many hopes and desires that come into this. And then the other piece that complicates all of this even more is a lot of times everybody around us has opinions on
Mm,
what we should or shouldn't do.
including professional.
including professionals. Yeah. I've seen therapists who I am trained in EFT. I love EFT, but EFT therapists who are like, do not separate. We need to come together. We need to co regulate and we need to work this out together. What are you doing? That's the worst thing you could do. You have individual therapists who might be like, whoa, hey, you can't regulate. You got to separate, which may or may not be the right answer for you. You have church leaders. I can't tell you how many church leaders that's like, no, you just need to have more sex, or you need to just make sure that you're telling things to each other every day that you love and appreciate about each other. You just need to do check ins. You just fill in the
You
blank.
just need to write a list of 20 things that you appreciate about each other.
Remember how you fell in love. Let's just talk about that day you fell in love. That's going to heal all of the relationship issues. I had some friends who were like, Alana, you really need to give this a chance. He's a really good guy. And I had other friends who were like, honey, you better get the hell out. And I had all of these messages coming at me at the exact same time.
Yeah.
And so I just I want to validate how much confusion it can feel with all of this. And so I hope that as we've slowed this part down a little bit, that you can hear me when I say the thing that I want you focusing on right now is getting clear with what you as an individual need for your own safety. What do you need to be able to get grounded for your nervous system to regulate? And I have had women who have said, it will actually be worse for me if he is out of the house. And here's all of the reasons why. And so I know for me, separation is not the answer. And I've also had women say, I need space. I need him out of the house because I cannot regulate when he's around. Even when he's downstairs, my body and my heart are just racing nonstop.
Yeah.
So again, no right answer, but you have to do this work for you to really slow down. And sometimes to be able to do that work, we have to be alone and even get out of the house, whether it's a day or two or it's an hour or two where nobody can be around you or bother you. Sometimes we have to get away just to even be grounded enough to start processing this.
Yeah. It's so true. And it also brings up for me the element of abuse and partner violence, because that is often a big factor in how this plays out and whether or not you can do this or not. So if there is, just have to do my spiel, if there is any abuse happening in your relationship, then please work with a professional to help you navigate what this looks like,
Yes, yes.
because it can absolutely escalate the violence, escalate abuse. Even if it's not physical, it can escalate the mental and the emotional and the verbal, financial abuse. So, really being clear, and I'm going to repeat what you just said, really being clear of what you need doesn't mean you have to go do something today. So I'll always tell my brain, like when I'm in this space of my brain's like, gotta make a decision. Well, if you take time to navigate this, then you're gonna have to make a decision. It just reminds, no, I don't have to make a decision. Certainly not today, but I'm gonna get more information or I'm gonna get curious. So that's really what I think we are inviting you to do today with this episode, is let this be just a space to get curious for yourself. And I love your suggestion there. I think just a couple hours a day can do wonders to your system as it gets a little bit of that space to think and ask yourself those questions. What is it that I need? Do I need some space to work on boundaries? Do I need some space to work on grounding, clarity, whatever that looks like for you? So,
Well, and I'm so glad you brought up the emotional abuse because when you have emotional abuse in a relationship, you have, there's not an actual number, but 10 times more fog and confusion. And it's a lot more complicated on navigating through that. And this question of what do I need? The majority of women who come through my groups have spent a lifetime making sure everyone else has what they need, that they don't even know how to ask that themselves that. So when someone says, "What do you need?" and there's this, "I don't know what I need. You tell me what I need." And so this is a journey and a process to do even what Amy and I are talking about in our next episode is going to be how to initiate a separation and the steps that go into that and the things to consider. And so we're going to go deeper into this. But the reason that we're breaking this up instead of doing one big long episode, well, A, it buys us some weeks. But the other reason why we're breaking this up is because we want you to take time with each of these thoughts. And I am totally one where it's like, as soon as my brain's like, this is what I need to do, I feel that like I have to act. And we don't. There's no finish line we're sprinting toward. It is absolutely okay to process this in layers and steps. And honestly, that's how the best healing happens is line upon line. In my groups this week, because my groups are new and we're laying some of these foundational principles, one of the things that we've been focusing a lot is on safety. And you hear that word on this podcast a lot. You're probably like, come on, Amie and Alana. I get it. I get it. Feeling emotionally safe does not mean that everything is like perfect or okay, or we're always going around skipping and happy. But it's where our nervous system is able to start to relax and it's not always heightened. And I talked about in my group this week the analogy with the Dr. Kevin Skinner. He'll talk about like the lion in your bed, but I like the grizzly bear or the bear in your bed. If I had a wild animal in my bed sleeping next to me, even if there's been a whole lot of trust that's been built, it's still a wild animal. And there's still a part of me that would be very activated and just being always alert with this bear next to me. And with individuals who have gone through betrayal trauma, a lot of them have experienced this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde of this grizzly bear and this teddy bear. Grizzly bear, teddy bear, and not knowing which one they're going to get. They've been very hurt by the grizzly bear before, but they've also had this sweet, sensitive comfort a lot of times from the teddy bear. And so when we start to let our body get regulated, then there is not that heightened fear around the person. There is not just them being in the house, our heart racing, our stomach queasy, not being able to think as clear. Now, them getting separated doesn't mean you magically feel safe because that's the other piece in our group that we keep talking about is when we put all of our safety on this other person and it's, I need you to do this, and therefore then I'm safe. Then what we do is we take, and I say this, we've said this in other podcasts, and I just recorded one this morning that you're going to hear double, but good because I want this to sink in that when we put our safety in their hands, all of it, then if they're teddy bear, then we're safe. But if they're the grizzly bear, now we're not safe. So we have to take that power back. We have to create that internal safety. And so the question I have for you is would space right now be more helpful for you to be able to create that internal safety? And the answer may be yes, and it may be no.
And you might not even know the answer to that. And here's okay. I
Wait, wait, wait.
might have shared this before, but oh well, worth repeating. I remember one experience I had that was one of those those moments where the stars kind of align where there's a real aha. So I didn't know that I needed space. I had no idea that I was being so flipped and turned around and abused until he had gone away for a trip. And it was out of the country. So I think it was for like a week or two. And up until that point, the house had to stay quiet, no loud noises. So I love blasting my music in the house when I'm getting ready. I know this is weird. I love vacuuming. Those things were like off limits. I had to wait till he was gone in order to do some of these louder things, unloading the dishwasher, too loud, just a lot of like quiet, quiet, right? Well, he was gone and started to make noise. And I was vacuuming and I just started to cry because I could vacuum. And I noticed that I was like trying to hurry. And then I was like, oh, wait, I don't have to hurry because he's gone. Oh my gosh. And things started to click like, oh, I don't have to hurry and vacuum. I let that I'm surprised the motor didn't burn out. I let that vacuum run all damn day. I had my music blasting. I was emptying a dishwasher like I was living, and I didn't realize that I wasn't
Mm,
till he had gone and gave me that space. That wasn't like it wasn't like we need to separate and have some space. So I want to just throw that out there too. Like you might not know until it actually happens. So maybe you're listening to this and you're like, no, I don't think we're there yet. And so, what I would offer any of you is that when you do have space, they're at work, you're at the store, you're on a weekend trip, whatever, notice your body and just start paying attention to like the difference of how your system's responding when you're in their presence versus how it's responding when you're out of their presence. And maybe something clicks.
I love that you shared that. And I think about when I initially asked Luke for separation, I said to him, I need you to leave and go for a week. I don't care where you go. I can't function. I can't think. You're always right there. I just need you to leave for a week. And then a couple days into it, I said, I think I'm going to need a little bit longer. And then about 4 or 5 days into it, I came back to him and I said, you need to find a place and get a year-long lease. Because with every day that went forward, I could see with more clarity how hurt I was, how much I needed to heal, and how much that space was essential for me. Now, our separation didn't end up being a full year. It was, I think, when it came down to it, about 4 months. But that being able to just experience it and then determine what I really needed, I didn't know that until I started it. And the beautiful thing is in that moment, I wanted a year, but I also gave myself Vicky Tidwell Palmer's Bill of Rights. I gave myself the right to change my mind. So by the time we came back together, it is what I wanted, and it was our next right step. But we don't have to figure it all out before we start. And I think that keeps, I'll say me, but a lot of people trapped is I have to have all the answers. I have to lay it out. I have to know exactly how long. I have to know where he's going, which we'll get into all of that. I have to have all of the pieces if I'm going to take any steps.
Yeah. Yeah. Or going back to what we talked about, I can't do that because then he will really act out and go back and listen to our episode on scared to leave him alone. It, and just we'll validate again. Yeah, it's really scary. And this can feel like a really scary step, but it can also be a really helpful, useful, informational step as well. And I find my brain just wanting to go and go and go, but
All
because we're
coming.
gonna
It's
we're gonna do
coming.
more episodes. But I think that's a good place to stop. I think let's just maybe wrap it up there and leave you with the invitation to think on this and to pay more attention to your body and to your own self regulation. If you're finding it just really, really difficult to regulate your emotions, to know what the heck you even think and don't think and feel and don't feel, okay, interesting. Interesting information. I wonder what I can do to help myself think and feel and regulate. What would that look like? Just play around with some ideas. You don't have to do anything right now, but I think just getting curious is a great place to start.
Beautifully said. So I'm sorry if you're listening to these live and you have to wait over a whole month to get all of this information. And I think that will be wonderful to give you time to just process what you really need. And for those of you who are listening to this later and you can binge them, I'm going to challenge you to spread it out a little bit. Or if you do binge them, give yourself time to work through the steps. Because when he is at just an organic speed and we're not rushing it, we're not forcing it, that's when we really can do what we need to do. So just patience with yourself, patience with the process. As always, thanks for hanging out with Amy and I this week. And we look forward to seeing you all next week.